Manahe. Darna Manahe is messy, it's uneven, at times it's even kind of unhinged, and yet it's one of the most creative horror films Bollywood has ever produced. At the very least, it's one of the most weirdest entries on this list, and I mean that as a genuine compliment. It's a 2003 Hindi language anthology horror film consisting of 6 unconnected short films and one overarching container film that hold them all together. Unlike most films discussed so far, it does not take itself all that too seriously, and more than just being a traditional horror film, it acts as a playground for weird and wacky horror concepts and ideas to be explored in a fun and campy setting. Oh, and then there is the fact that it's an anthology film, similar to the VHS franchise for those in the know. But unlike the VHS and other anthology franchises, Darna Manahe actually has some serious acting talent involved. I was genuinely surprised seeing so many big Bollywood stars in such short roles, and I'm itching to tell you who they are, but it's best to experience it for yourself, so no spoilers except for whatever was shown in the trailers anyway. Here's how the movie plays out. 7 friends, while on a long road trip at night, are brought to halt by a flat tire in the middle of a forested road. They are unable to reach out for help but notice a small, well-lit clearing in the middle of the forest where they decide to gather and wait for help. And while they do, they decide to tell each other spooky stories to pass the time, and these stories play out as those anthology horror shots. Meanwhile, simultaneously, a killer stalks them and takes them out one by one as the movie progresses. This is quite a quirky premise, and the movie gets points for originality alone. And like I said earlier, weird would be the word that I would use to describe the entire film, and in a good way. For starters, the film opens with this very well-produced erotic montage featuring the lead actresses in skin-tight clothing dancing over the opening credits. I mean, what the hell? As an online film critic, the expectation from me is to tell you that I'm offended and whine about female objectification and whatnot, but I'm not one of those librando film critics, so screw that. More films should be doing this. The film then begins proper, and it feels a bit clunky and amateurish for a while, despite the entertaining weird factor. Not exactly the best first impression. You see, the problem with this film and anthology films like it is the inconsistency that one must deal with, since each of the horror shots are of very different quality when it comes to all aspects of filmmaking. And Darna Manahe is unfortunately a prime example of this, with maybe 1 or 2 great horror shots, 2 or 3 okay ones, and at least one being extremely mid. And apart from these, the overarching story of the friends being stalked by the killer might be one of the worst of the bunch, and when viewed in isolation, it feels like amateur hour saved only by the fact that the lead actress is exceptionally hot. That being said, the film is saved by the fact that there is so much creativity and originality to these shots, even if those are not executed to perfection. And there is so much variety as well, with the shots not just aiming for traditional horror, but also the strange, the uncanny, and the downright absurd as well. Minor spoiler, but this will explain what the film is going for. In one of the shots, the lead gains the ability to pause time for those who can see and hear him, and as you might expect, he slowly starts to abuse his power for evil as the shot progresses, and the story then concludes in one of the most hilarious and unexpected ways that you can never predict. And this film is simply worth the watch for this particular shot alone. And like I said, most of these shots are brought to life by veterans of Bollywood, so even if the concept or the execution is not up to your liking, the performances will definitely keep you entertained. Also helps the fact that this film is extremely technically competent as well, with some really well shot nighttime sequences that make you feel the darkness closing in around you, plus some exceptional production design, practical and visual effects. Now, to conclude, this is a difficult one to rank on the tier list, as I had mixed feelings watching the film, considering how uneven it was regardless of its originality and creativity. Maybe this unevenness and inconsistency is what is holding it back from being one of the greats or even the good ones that you see recommended all the time. But I would still say this: if you have the time and the patience, this film is a definite watch if you are a fan of the horror, especially its weird side. So with all these things considered, I'm gonna put this film straight in the underrated category. Sure, the film is not unpopular by any means, but I feel like it deserves more attention than your typical mainstream horror film, despite its inconsistencies and flaws, thanks purely due to how weird and wacky it gets. And now, from a very underrated film to a very popular film as far as South India is concerned anyway, Demonte Colony.